Your seats. We're going to get started. All right. So welcome everyone, both in person and over Zoom. It's great to have you all with us tonight. I'll quickly introduce myself and some of my colleagues up here. I'm Devin McNally. I'm the acting director of the city's Housing and Community Development Department. To my right, I have our transit planner, Casey Ann Webley. To my left, I have Daryl Braithwaite, our Director of Public Works. And then over on the far end, we have Sergeant Wolf from the Tacoma Park Police Department. If you could go to the next slide and the slide after that.
Did you want to introduce
Yes.
the council?
So I just want to remind everyone tonight that we have interpreters available in both Spanish and Amharic. And if they would come out and just quickly introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm the Amharic interpreter. This is Rahel. Do you want me to say it in Amharic just in case?
Yes, please.
ይሄንን ስብሰባ በአማርኛ ቋንቋ መከታተል የምትፈልጉ ከሆነ ይሄንን መሳሪያ መታችሁ መውሰድ ትችላላችሁ። ወይም ደግሞ በዙም ከሆነ እየተከታተላችሁ ነው ያላችሁት በስተቀኝ በኩል የዓለም ምልክት አለች። እዛ ቋንቋ ላይ አማርኛ የሚለውን ቋንቋ ስትጫኑ ይሄንን ስብሰባ በአማርኛ መከታተል ትችላላችሁ። እናመሰግናለን። Thank you.
And do we have our Spanish translator here? Coming out.
Buenas noches. Voy a ser la intérprete para ustedes en español. Estamos atrás, pero si tienen preguntas o algo, aquí estaremos para ustedes también. De nada.
Thank you both very much. And so if you are tuning in, oh, excellent. All right, next slide, please. So a little bit of background and context, and I will try to make my portion very quick because I know that a lot of you have come here to kind of weigh in and provide that kind of context. But we were tasked with developing new administrative regulations that were approved by council late last year. And so they came into effect July 1st of this year. To improve our equity process around how we determine traffic calming and sidewalk installations. So this is our first go around with it. You can find more about it on our website, and it has all the administrative regulations in process. Next slide, please. So there's a whole process that is laid out in the regulations, and if you can hit the next. There's a submission process which we went through, and that was open until November 20th. And right now we're in the consultation phase. So this is a community meeting to review all those requests that came in from residents. And then the next step will be an evaluation. It'll be a technical evaluation by city staff that'll provide a scoring that'll then be presented with the comments and notes, kind of the qualitative piece, in front of council as part of their budget process. And then the projects that are approved by the city council will be moved forward for design and construction by our public works department. So we are still in that consultation phase. So tonight is all about hearing the pieces of the lived experience. So what your experience is why, if you were the person who put in the request, why you put in that request, or if you agree or disagree with that request, what your reasons are for that for your position. The idea is we want to provide a holistic view of these requests. There is a technical scoring side, but that only tells part of the story. And so your input is really critical to helping score those and eventually for the City Council in making those decisions about funding. So we know that there will be questions about the staff criteria. So there are 6 sections that we're looking at. We're looking at equity, safety. Oh, next slide, please. We're looking at equity, safety, the trip generation, so how many cars are coming, some of the characteristics of the roadway, the impact, and then also the feasibility. So a lot of different ones, and that it goes into a technical score. And so tonight we're really focused on kind of what the lived experience is of these different roadways. If you could go to the next slide. And so as you can see, we have kind of different pieces for traffic calming. We're really looking at the roadway, and sidewalk, we're looking at the population. Next slide. So for tonight's meeting, we have a few ground rules. If you would like to give oral comments, please raise your hand. We have a number of different staff members who can bring a mic to you. We do ask, we have a number of people in the audience and on Zoom, so we're asking that you limit your comments to 1 or 2 minutes. We're trying to get everyone's voice in and heard. We also ask that you write down your comment as well. So we've provided note cards for people who are with us here tonight. If you're on Zoom, we ask that you write it into the chat. That way we can collect all this information and put it into our analysis. We also have a complete list of submissions and maps that are available. They are over there if you're in person and online. Casey, how can they?
They'll be posted tomorrow.
Gotcha. So if you don't have it, they will be posted online tomorrow. All right. So for this round, we've included all the requests that were submitted as of November 20th, 2024. So if you put in a request that was after that date, we're sorry it won't be included this year. The good news is we will be doing this again next year, and so we will put those in for consideration next year. We did do one go through of the requests. If it was outside of the city limits, we did not include it. This is because it's not under city control, and we wouldn't be able to do any changes there. How we've organized it today is by ward and neighborhood. So we've tried to group these together so that we can have a focused discussion because in some cases there were streets that had several different requests associated with it. And so with that, I'll start with our one citywide comment. We had one request, which was for no turn on red citywide. So if anyone would like to speak on this particular proposal, please raise your hand and we can get around. Yes.
Jim Jackman, Ward 2, just in support of it. A great example is on New Hampshire and Sligo Creek. If you've ever tried to cross that, I believe if the officer could confirm that is a $250 fine if you sort of cut across someone who's on a crosswalk. But just that sort of, trying to sort of stop when that would be one intersection I would flag as it would be great, but I would support it in every traffic lights in Tacoma Park. Thank you.
I just wanted to provide some feedback on that, which is that all the traffic signals in the city, is it, I don't know how to. It's not amplified.
Maybe you have to bring
Turn on my mic? Yeah. How about now? Okay, cool. Yeah, so the traffic signals in the city are all on state highways. So the city doesn't have direct control over those streets. However, very helpful to get specific recommendations. We'd be happy to raise those issues to State Highway on the city's behalf, and we can track that request. We do have a process where we meet quarterly with the State Highway District 3 staff, the city staff, and State Highway staff. So we track a list of requests that we've made to them, and they follow a number of criteria, particularly the manual on uniform traffic control devices. So they're very restrictive in terms of what they will allow. But in some cases, we have been able to make requests that get approved. So we'd be happy to put that forward.
All right. Any other comments? Oh.
I just walked with, but are these for, I'm more interested in the Ray Drive?
We will get to that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. We're starting with the citywide proposals first.
I have a question. Is there a time, do you have a
Hey,
time limit?
wait.
Sorry,
There was a raised hand.
Is there just a schedule for these actions?
So right now we're taking just comments on all the proposals. The question was, is there a schedule? So taking comments, and then later in the spring they will be voted on by the city council after a technical analysis by staff that includes all the comments that we received during this public hearing.
Approved projects will be included in next year's budget. So depending on the complexity of the project, it may start design, it may get all the way through to construction for those projects that are approved and funded and included in the next year's budget. And that would be from a period of July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year.
All right. Any other comments on this proposal? All right. So we're going to start off with Ward 1. And I have difficulty reading. So the first one is Chestnut Avenue. And the proposal was a one-way street.
Pavement marking.
Pavement marking?
Yeah, it's pavement marking.
Gotcha. Any comments on this?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rebecca Broussard. I'm on Darwin Avenue, and I just wanted to note that this one-way proposal is connected to other sidewalk projects that have already been approved and are in the design and finalization stage. So this would allow kids going to the bus stop at the bottom of the hill that go back and forth from the middle school. It's a very narrow road, and in order to put that sidewalk in, it would really help with the traffic and also with the buses to make that a one-way and then preserve some of the parking for some of the people who live on Philadelphia specifically. And this is also bundled in with the Hodges Lane sidewalk project and Darwin Avenue, which I'm incredibly interested in because we're all between all the schools and the park, and I just wanted to stress the importance of trying to get funding for those in your next go-round, bundled with this project.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any other comments on Chestnut? All right. Moving along to Grant. Between Piney Branch and Holly Avenue, there was a request for a speed bump. Any comments on this proposal?
Yeah, so I didn't even know about this one, but I'm supportive of it because people coming from the schools, again, they don't stop at the stop signs, and it's an accident waiting to happen. So I don't know how much the speed bumps really slow people down, because I know they just go right over the one on my street, but whatever we can do to encourage traffic calming there, because there's just a lot of kids and elderly folks and people with dogs and everything in that area, yeah.
Is there a particular area? It sounds like there's a specific stop sign you're talking about.
So it's at Grant and Holly. At
Okay.
Grant and Holly, everybody just blows through that stop sign. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'll just mention that what happens in that area is that vehicles that are coming inbound on Piney Branch and they don't want to potentially have to wait a long time for a left turn onto Philadelphia, they'll cut left onto Grant and then kind of try to scoot through Hodges Heights as quick as they can and come out at the stop sign at Holly in Philadelphia. And so that's probably contributing to the problem.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? All right, moving along. Ward 2, starting with Garland Avenue, and there's a sidewalk request on Garland between Carroll and Flower Avenue. Are there any comments on this proposal? See a raised hand.
Oh, okay, sure. Hi, I'm Aaron Ciedion, Ward 2. I live on Garland Avenue at the corner of Garland and Davis. I support a sidewalk on Garland Avenue. If the road has to be narrowed for a sidewalk, I think that's a good thing. If the city needs to build on its right-of-way, I of course knew that it was the city's right-of-way when I bought my house, and I'm prepared to, have our plantings turn into a sidewalk. I think that's a great thing. I have 2 small kids. I don't want to have to be a helicopter parent every time we're outside, but I do have to do that because we're literally in the road. So yeah, I support this.
I live on Trescott Avenue at the corner of Trescott and Garland. My name is Craig Alexander. I support sidewalks on Garland Avenue between Flower and Carroll Avenue. Garland Avenue has become a significant cut-through, particularly at commute times. And those, unfortunately, are the same times when kids tend to go to the buses or bus stops. There are major bus stops for both elementary school kids and middle school kids on Garland Avenue. And those kids have to walk in non-sidewalk areas to get to those bus stops, which is a real danger. This is particularly important on Lower Garland, where there are a couple bends that are blind. So cars come up Garland from Flower. It's hard to see them around the bend. It's hard for pedestrians to get out of the way. Notice I said for pedestrians to get out of the way. It should be the other way around. Cars should be stopping and giving way to pedestrians, but that, given the cut-through nature and given the lack of sidewalks, that doesn't happen. I walk my dog and walk frequently in the neighborhood. Several times a year, I have to dive out of the way because cars are coming up around those bends very quickly, particularly dusk. Every other month, it's a little dicey to get out of the way, so that's relatively frequently. And parents with kids who have to send their kids to the bus stop, really for safety reasons, need to accompany their kids, which is we shouldn't have that in Tacoma Park. So I urge the city to put in sidewalks along Garland, and particularly start with those areas where there are blind bends. Thank you.
Roz.
Hi, I'm Laura Nelson. I live on Central Avenue, and ditto. I agree with everything you said. The curves in the road. It's even hard, making a turn in a car where you live to see cars coming, let alone cars having to watch for pedestrians and so forth. Which it's a lot of kids and dogs.
Yeah.
Are,
I'll defer and then come back to you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Bila Lindner, and I live on Garland near Davis as well. Aaron is my very close neighbor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this evening. I have 2 young children. I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm currently teaching my 6-year-old to ride a bike in the middle of the street and teaching my 1-year-old daughter to walk in the middle of the street. And we have to walk in the middle of the street to get my son to the bus stop, We're constantly dodging cars. There's very little visibility because there's a lot of parking on both sides of the street. As well, mentioning that it's a major thoroughfare between Carroll and New Hampshire Avenue. People blow through stop signs, speeding, even with the new stop sign. I think that might be helping a little bit. But, I think it's also just a matter of building community in the neighborhood as well. I'd love to be able to run into my neighbors and chat with them, not in the middle of the street, be able to more easily take my children to the creek and the playgrounds nearby. We underutilize those spaces because we have to walk in the middle of the street. So, I'm obviously very pro this change. And also, as a driver, I'm scared to drive, at dusk and in the area because I feel like I could hit someone, and that's scary for me as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Kirschlin. I live on the 7200 block of Garland Avenue. I've lived there for almost 30 years, and I strongly support putting sidewalks on either side of the street, and if it means, putting a sidewalk on the right-of-way in front of my house, so be it. I echo everything my neighbors have said. There are children, there are people of all ages. I sit at my dining room table, eating breakfast, look out the window. The parade of people with dogs who are exercising, people who are going down to the park that runs along, I guess it's called Sligo, Sligo South. The park and playgrounds on Sligo Creek Avenue, along Sligo Creek Parkway. Anyway, there is that constant, if I'm walking down the street, I have to look over my shoulder every time I approach a parked car or one of the bends in the road, because you never know when a car is going to come whipping around. So, sidewalks.
I'm Barbara Knoxscythe. I also live on Garland. I'm near the corner with Minter, and I echo everything everybody else has been saying. I also wanted, and I walk a dog as well, sometimes at night, sometimes at dusk, sometimes in the middle of the day. I have had people blow through stop signs, nearly hit me. One day I was walking on what would have been the left side of the road, that a car was coming up, and it was at night, and they were coming straight at me. I ended up having to get on someone's front yard and a ways. So just that pedestrian safety, but as somebody else said, as a driver, I also live in fear. And one of the intersections that hasn't been mentioned that I find very dangerous is where Garland and Carroll intersect, because the traffic on Carroll is often nearly tailgating you, so you want to make your right turn or left turn into Garland quickly, but it's narrow there, and there's no visibility, and there's not even much of a verge for people to walk on. So I very seldom come in that way because I'm worried about there being someone in the road, and I definitely don't walk that way unless it's a very, very low traffic time.
Hi, my name is Olga. I live on Jackson Avenue, just a couple blocks over from Garland. And I want to share a story that the police Mr. Wolf might be aware of, which is we had a Kia stalker, right? This Kia car would drive around at night and stop where women were walking their dogs. And it got to the point where it was on the listserv often. I think the police got called. Now, I walk around every single night. And I'll tell you, when the Kia comes up, there's nowhere to hide, right? There's nowhere to run. You're walking along, and there's this car, and then you have parked cars next to you. So I think this is just an example of how it's really not very safe to walk in the middle of the street. And this would happen at night, in the dark. Now, if there had been a sidewalk on any of these places, right? You go on the sidewalk, and now you have a parked car between you and weirdo, which would have felt a whole lot better. So that's just one example of how this really doesn't feel safe. And I walk every single night. I also have to wonder how anybody who's handicapped manages on these streets. There are no curb cuts for driveways that I'm aware of, right? So I don't even know how they come off the curb if they want to go anywhere. But then if you're in a wheelchair, you don't have a lot of space. So you're now going between parked cars. I guess I'm not even sure how it's legal, ADA compliant, to not have a sidewalk. And this Garland sidewalk would close a loop, right? Garland to Carroll, to Flower, to Garland. And you could walk around the neighborhood, walk to bus stops, walk over to Aldi, walk up to the co-op, all safely. And I think this is completely missing from our neighborhood. If we want to make it walkable and safe, and we want to stop using our car as much, right? If we want to feel safe walking. So clearly, I support the sidewalk.
Thanks.
Jim Delajackma, 7400 Garland. I'd be interested to know at what stage of this process you can address some of the issues that have come up here. One is speed limits and cut-through traffic. I think as Officer Wolf knows, and there's been a discussion, the speed limit is 25, but it's often on the navigation apps it's 30, and that will give me direct traffic into Garland, but it'll also direct traffic into what's coming up in Central and Flower. The second point is how and at what stage will the stormwater issues being addressed that I know are under discussion or consideration for Garland, the intersection of Davis and Garland, Jackson and Garland, Trescott and Garland, they're all that water flowing down. Will this be addressed as sort of part of this process, or is that an opportunity to address this part of the process? The third issue is when we talk about the city right-of-way, you've got trees on that city right-of-way that some of them are 70, 80, probably older. What are the options and how does the planning department think that these could be addressed? It might not be answered today, but I'd be interested to see what those options are. Because, for example, cutting down a tree is probably not going to contribute to our urban forest canopy. Going around it is going to take away parking spaces, which some people will be happier than others. But those are the three issues I'd like to see addressed. And I think thinking about cut-through traffic on Garland, we're thinking about cut-through traffic on Central and Flower and the whole neighbourhood. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just provide a brief response. I don't want to get too into the details because we've got a lot on the agenda this evening. In terms of speed limits, the state has passed a law that allows a reduction in speed limit to up to 15 miles an hour. However, the way the law was written, it still requires an engineering analysis. And so we're still trying to get clarity on the requirements for that. Any of you that might guess, our roads were designed for the speed limits that we currently have. So if you do an engineering analysis, you're not going to get the result that you want. There's been efforts in the last legislative session to amend the law, so that's ongoing. But right now, the city has not been able to take advantage of that ability to reduce the speed limit because of the conditions that were included in the law change. Cut-through traffic is a problem everywhere. I think any of you who are living in cut-through areas based on the Purple Line construction are living that on a day-to-day basis. It's a real challenge. The only thing we can offer at this point, we can't restrict cars from coming on our roads. They're public roads. People can drive on them, is to try to make the conditions safer through traffic calming. So that's part of what traffic calming projects are. In processes where we are designing a sidewalk, trees and utility poles and the existing right-of-way are all factors that are considered with the evaluation of the design. Oftentimes we look at which side of the road impacts trees least and which side has the utility poles. So there's some of the things that we evaluate when we're developing designs. The city does follow the city's tree ordinance. If trees are removed, they have to be replaced in the same quantity as any private property owner would have to do. So it's not a one-for-one. It can be multiple trees, and we try to plant those trees in the areas where they were removed. So that is a part of our sidewalk process. There's also a stormwater function in our sidewalk process. When we're adding impervious area, we hold ourselves to the same requirements in terms of stormwater treatment for the additional impervious surface. Lastly, the project at Garland and Davis is included in this current fiscal year and is just at the beginning of design.
Hi, Cindy DeBala, Councilmember for Ward 2. Two things to add to that briefly. So the state bill that was referred to by Darrell is being reintroduced this year, and as soon as I get the bill number, everyone in Ward 2 will know it. and you can comment on that, Bill. And the second thing is for the panelists. I have received a few written comments on this and some of the other projects for people who were not able to be here, and I will make sure that you have them all. I just wanted everybody else to know that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Any other comments?
Yeah, this is a question. The project at Garland and Davis, is that the water main repair?
No, that's will be done by WSSC. The project that Jim was referring to is a stormwater treatment project.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to try to keep it moving because we've still got a lot more to go. But I want to thank you all for your comments. We'll now move on to Flower Avenue, which has a number of different proposals associated with it. One is for a local traffic only sign and a speed reduction to 15 miles per hour between Carroll and Sligo. A raised walkway along Flower Avenue. At Flower and Garland, a no through traffic sign and a stop sign camera. From Jackson to Garland, traffic signage or restrictions, and that is it. So if you have any comments on these proposals, please raise your hand. Oh, already a couple of hands.
Oh, great. So I know that there are no through traffic signs up at the moment, and I can tell you how much good they do. Everyone's aware that they can drive through there, and so signage obviously doesn't really do anything. The thing that I can see really working well is the stop sign cameras, which I know are not going to be particularly popular necessarily, but from the vantage point of my home office, I can watch people all the time kind of driving straight through the stop sign at Flower and Davis at various speeds, sometimes very quickly. And so that, I could see, and additionally at the bottom of the hill, those two stop signs seem like very high value points to have something that actually does some enforcement.
Yeah, I do want to say that we're currently not allowed to have stop sign cameras. So the state has to authorize those. We do have the ability to do red light cameras. And so those are being implemented on a number of intersections, but stop signs, we don't currently have authority to enforce violations of stop signs.
Yeah, good evening. Steve Mercer, 7200 block of Flower. To that point, how can we get better enforcement then if everyone's ignoring the stop signs, firstly? I've lived on the street for over 20 plus years. I have rentals in my home, and every single person who's lived in my home, including myself, has been sideswiped. I'm not talking mirrors, I'm talking actual damage to the side of the car. So there's two problems. There's volume of traffic on an already narrow street. So I would propose the one direction in AM and the other direction in PM to take the volume of traffic off the street.
Hi, yeah, I think that that intersection where there's a crook in the road and there's stop signs, is, I think that's the worst because you've got cars from three directions coming, making turns. There's cars that often park near the intersection, so the visibility can sometimes be impaired. So if you're coming down from Flower, coming down the road from Carroll, and you stop, you're taking a turn, and then there's driveways immediately. So, people trying to pull out in the morning, it's a steady stream. I mean, it's just like, you'll see 10 cars, coming up, and you have to wait for all of them, and then hope that the other direction nobody's coming. It's very hard to pull in and out. And it's just plain hard to navigate, even if you're just like creeping along. making a turn, it's almost, I don't actually, if there's somebody in that intersection, even if I was there first, I will wait for them to clear because I can't make the turn without going over a curb or something. You know, it's a big problem.
And just to make sure I'm crystal clear, it's as you're coming down Flower, turning
Jackson. Flower Jackson.
Flower and Jackson. Gotcha.
Well, that's one of the ones that's.
Yeah, and then Cherry and Flower. It's
Okay.
another 90-degree turn that clogs the buses
Yeah.
morning and afternoon.
A lot of those streets are just very narrow, and you just have to be very. My husband and I are always arguing, which way do you approach it? Because they're all hazardous.
Craig Alexander, I want to comment on just how unsafe it is for pedestrians and cyclists crossing along the Sligo Creek Trail, along where you have to cross Flower coming down. I don't know how many times I've seen drivers not yield to pedestrians, to cyclists, putting them in danger. So that something has to be done with that intersection. And I know it's very, very complex, but right now it's not working. My other pitch is I am very sympathetic to the people on Flower who go through hell with all of the cut-through traffic and the narrow street. But I think I urge the group to understand that this community is a whole, and whatever happens on Flower is going to have spillover effects everywhere else in this small sort of community with only a few inlets and outlets. So I strongly support doing something on Flower. I just want everybody to understand that what the effects will be elsewhere, because some of that cut-through traffic will be sent elsewhere, and maybe that's the right thing, but we need to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, it's Olga again. I completely support the, I guess, what is it, 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. But again, there's a question of enforcement. And I walk every night, and I walk up Flower Avenue a couple of times every night between Garland and Carroll, and I see police officers flying down that road. And it's cool you guys have SUVs, because I see on the bump a nice little flying over. But it's like, so I can see how everybody wants to go down Flower as quickly as possible. Everybody. But if there's no enforcement, like the police don't pull over and wait and see, and absolutely nobody, once it's past like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., nobody does anything but a rolling stop down at Garland and Flower. That intersection is crazy. I don't cross unless there are no cars, because I know they're not going to stop. I mean, they either don't see me or they're not even thinking about it. Or, I mean, I can look into these cars. Most of them people are on their phone, and they don't know they don't have to stop there. And I know that you've had enforcement out there before. I mean, for a while, a police officer will sit on Jackson, and a lot of them are residents. Residents will start complaining they're getting tickets. Sometimes they'll sit down on Garland at Flower, and then, again, you hand out tickets. But then enforcement seems to stop for 6 months to a year after that. And so it doesn't seem like it helps long term. So, I mean, although a lower speed limit would be great, my question is, does it do anything if there's no enforcement of the speed limit? You know what I mean? Like that would be, I mean, I'm all for it, but it just seems like there's a huge lack of enforcement there, and it's such a cut-through traffic. And certainly we don't want it going then up into Trescott and Garland, because we've made it one way or no way, or we've shut it down and blown it up, because all these problems are going to go elsewhere. But something does need to be done. It's an unsafe, I do not drive on Flower, ever. I'd rather, snake around wherever else I have to go.
Thank you for those comments. Appreciate it.
Did you want to say something about enforcement? How the traffic enforcement detail?
I agree that that's a spot for enforcement, and I also, with your comment as well, it matches up. I think that spot would be a good spot for a flashing stop sign, because it's not your typical intersection. It's a crosswalk with a bike trail that's heavily used. Walk trail goes right through there. So I think those are very good comments, and I'm sure you've seen me there before. But yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask, is that and you were talking about raised, I assume it was raised crosswalks? Is that the intersection where a raised crosswalk?
There's different options.
Okay,
and-
because I think that
yeah.
the intersection at the bottom of Flower would be a good one for a sidewalk that has a calming effect. I have sat in my car and had to wait for about 4 or 5 cars coming down Flower, not even tapping their brake in the least, blowing through that stop sign, sometimes blowing through the stop sign on Sligo Parkway.
Yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
that happen coming on
The other
Sligo as
aggravating
well, but
factor
that's
to
not
that
ours.
is that it's downhill. It's a
Yeah.
steep grade, so even drivers that are trying to do a normal speed are going faster than usual because of the downhill. Yeah. No, it doesn't. It just causes the stop sign to be violated more often. Yeah.
Yeah, I do wanted to point out that we do have a raised crosswalk at that intersection, believe it or not. It's unable to be very effective because of the slope in the road and the bridge, but yeah, it's there. The good news to report is that Park and Planning, which owns and manages the Sligo Creek Parkway and the surrounding area, has received a several $million grant, and that intersection and crossing are one of the areas that they plan to improve. We met with them a year or so ago, and at that point they were in very early stages. They're still in early stages, but we hope that they're still continuing that project. We're hoping to get an update from Park and Planning soon, but there's a number of trail crossing areas that are problematic in Tacoma Park, and so those are going to be included in their trail work. So there will be some activity on Park and Planning for the trail and the connectivity at that Flower and the bridge.
I loved it when the bridge was under construction. We had zero cut-through traffic. That would be completely not
Asking for the mic.
I would just point out, thank you for the feedback on the no cut-through traffic signs. It's not just you. We've gotten quite a few emails of citizens saying that it's been working, and really that's the only way we'll know for sure is when you're letting us know, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, in particular with the probably with the purple line closure, which we thought we'd have an effect. We've seen cars kind of stretched all the way from Flower and Jackson, just kind of all the way down the hill out of sight. So the amount coming through is still pretty, I would say, more significant now. Again, which is not surprising because
we never expected that it would be
but it's
100%,
certainly,
but there's been a reduction. So
and one of the things that that my wife and I have talked about with regard to things like a lower speed limit would be the reason one of the reasons people come through is because their GPS apps tell them to come through. Possibly one of the reasons for that is that there's a 25 mile per hour speed limit, and so they can quickly get through the neighborhood. And we think that one hope for lowering the speed limit to 15, which one could do throughout the neighborhood to address some concerns of spillovers, is that you would see less traffic, Uber, Lyft, et cetera, and various other delivery and the like, just being directed along that stretch.
I agree, and actually haven't thought about that with the GPS telling everyone to go that direction because it's faster route or whatever.
We can hear their GPS.
I appreciate that feedback. That is excellent. Only thing, and I agree with the comments on the one-way streets, because if they can't get through it all because it's a one-way street, they're going to have to be more inconvenienced if they're not local traffic. If they don't live there, they're going to have to go further. So their choices are going to be harder to make. And it's also very effective to do that. This doesn't cost anything. So I think it should be considered.
Suffer through the inconvenience of a one-way street.
I think it should be considered to add, a one way in, one way out, and such.
All right. I want to make sure that we're moving through all of these. So, are there any other kind of comments on the proposals at Flower?
Hi, Roger Schlegel, Ward 3 council member. Since it was raised, the question arises sometimes about whether the city has the ability to take streets or routes off of the navigation apps databases. I remember hearing once that when there was an incident at Columbia and Poplar, the idea of taking out Columbia because a school bus or some large bus got hung up, But is that possible or not? Some people have wondered whether that was possible.
Yeah, not that we're aware of.
All right. Any other comments on Flower Avenue?
I would say it may be possible through Google's team or whoever's running that particular app. It may not be 100% because there's so many apps and things out there. But for the main ones, it might be. I'm not 100% sure.
All right. Moving on to Central, we have one request for a sidewalk along Central Avenue. Any comments on this proposal?
Hi. I would just say that whatever I said for Garland is equally true for Central. And I think the neighborhood in some ways gave up on Central and just decided to ask for one sidewalk in Garland, which is I think why there's probably only one proposal for Central. Maybe someone didn't get the memo. But I actually believe that Central would be just as nice to have a sidewalk. It has all the exact same issues, right? It doesn't have the curb cuts. It's very narrow. It's a very narrow street, and because of the hill, it's hard to see. It's another street I walk at night. But I would just add that whatever I think was said for Garland really is kind of true for Central as well.
Yeah, I just echo that and say what's obvious, which is, sidewalks have value as a network, right? So it's just like a street. It's only as valuable as what it's connected to. And so in terms of using the neighborhood and kids being able to safely transit and play, a sidewalk on Garland would be great. If it connects to other sidewalks in our neighborhood, that's even better. You can walk down Davis and see where the sidewalk ends. It's very frustrating, and hopefully we don't make those kind of mistakes that this go around. And because I have to leave soon, I just want to point out one other thing, which is I believe I read that or was told that in terms of prioritizing projects, you all will be looking at equity and crash data. And so I just want to point out that like a lot of the comments that were made tonight are people talking about how they've totally changed their behavior and all of their choices to avoid being hit by cars. So I don't know how our neighborhood is going to show up in terms of crash data and safety, but I just want to say that whatever the current status quo is, it's informed by people, radically changing their lives, wearing reflective vests, choosing different roads to go down, et cetera, in order to avoid either hitting someone or being hit.
I would second that much of what applies to Garland also applies to Central. I'd say the first priority, though, or at least my first priority, would be Garland. I think Garland is much more of a cut-through. There are many more blind corners on Garland, and so I think that should be the priority of the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on Central? All right. Moving along to Cherry at the 7200 block corner of Cherry Avenue, which is to restrict traffic to one direction northbound in the AM and southbound in the PM.
And I think they meant Flower. I think that's an error.
Yeah.
There is no 7200 Cherry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a miss.
Okay, so they're talking about Flower. Okay. All right. And then Sligo Creek Parkway and Heather or Hayward asking for a speed bump. Any comments on this proposal? All right. And then Prince George's Avenue at Belford, there's a request for a raised walkway. Any comments on this proposal? Oh, right down in front.
Hi, are you gonna hold it? Okay, Roz will hold it because we won't see it. I'm the requester, and so in my opinion, it was an oversight. We just had a sidewalk installed, and one of the small intersections has a raised crosswalk, but that one does not. So in my opinion, it would kind of complete that flow. And I did notice that take this for what it is, because I'm snarky, but we really need some sort of sensor there that when it detects a bad action of a vehicle, it shoots darts at their tires. We've got to do something. But, you know, everything everyone is saying about safety for pedestrians is spot on. Thank you.
Thanks.
You got one of those shooting stars? Okay.
All right. Any other comments on Prince George's? All right. Lincoln and Boyd, a traffic sign or restrictions. Any comments on this proposal? All right. Casey, do you want to read it out? Oh, in the
I just want to clarify, when a person is making a request.
can you hang on?
When a person is making a request that you tallied here, is there additional information? You know, because if there's no one to speak to this, I'm really not clear what they're getting at.
I
So-
can answer.
Yeah.
So this is from the online application or submission form, and there were opportunities for additional comments. In some cases, they were quite lengthy and detailed. This is really just a chance to broaden the conversation and hear other people's experiences. It doesn't negate. If someone isn't here in the room who submitted something, that submission continues through the process.
And let me add in, if you're asking for pavings or raised markings, you might get a sidewalk. And if you're asking for a sidewalk, you might get raised pavings and paintings. We'll take all of them seriously. And they are definitely considering the number of complaints in one particular area. The more complaints, the more attention it'll get, and obviously safety is a big issue. And there are some instances where paved marking just won't work. It has to be a sidewalk because it's that serious. But I appreciate, so we'll take all of that into consideration.
Want to go to Ward 3?
All right. And we can come back. So we have a question out of Zoom. We're going to check into that, and then we'll loop back around if we're able to unmute for Zoom. But we'll start with Ward 3 and then loop back. So there was requests on Orchard Avenue between 4th and 5th for a speed bump, and then at 5th Avenue a stop sign, speed bump, or one-way. Some sort of intervention there. So any comments on Orchard?
Yes, hi, I'm Paul Wida, Ward 3. I just want to comment and support and also clarify, I do not drive a Kia. I like Kias, but I'm not that guy. So on Orchard Avenue, yes, I'm in support of this. My neighbors are in support. We've met with, amongst each other. We met with Roger, our council member. We've met with previous council members. So this is a request that's been on the books, and we would be supportive of, because there's no speed bump on Orchard between Sligo Mill and 4th Avenue. At the bottom of that hill, there's school bus stops. There's kids along. There are sidewalks. We did request that when Roger was just a commenter and not a council member. And so we got those to help, bridge the gap between New Hampshire and the rest of Tacoma Park, and it's been very helpful. So speed bumps are going to, be a traffic calming measure. I think it's going to help out. And just another piece of the puzzle in order to make our neighborhood a little more safe. I mean, the item about one way, I may personally not be in favor of that, even though it would help with cut through traffic. I just think that folks would probably ignore it, and that would cause another safety issue. So at least the speed bumps would slow down. A stop sign at 5th and Orchard would be helpful as well. And that's also, I just want to comment and speak to everyone here in the room. Be careful what you wish for. So when you get these sidewalks in, they might be a little bit wider than you might think. That may cut, the amount of space available on the road for you to park. So you'll have to weigh whether or not that's an issue for you, whether giving up some of that parking space on the street or having a sidewalk is important to you. So just a word of caution when you start asking for these things.
Thank you.
I believe there is a stop sign at Orchard and Fifth, so.
There is on
Yeah.
one side.
On the Orchard, at the Fifth side.
Right, but not
Not a-
freeway.
Okay, not a three-way.
And it may be possible that we could implement temporary speed bumps, which are portable, so we could try. No, okay. No test runs.
We have a written comment coming in from Zoom.
This is, can you hear me now? Okay. This is from Jeremy. Good evening, my name is Jeremy Schwartz. I live on Orchard Avenue. I'm joining the meeting tonight to strongly support both my request for speed humps on Orchard Avenue as well as the traffic calming request for Orchard and Fifth Avenues. This is a critical safety issue for our neighborhood, and I urge the city to approve these requests. Orchard Avenue is a residential street that unfortunately suffers from significant cut-through traffic. Because of its location near to New Hampshire and Eastern Avenues, drivers use it as a shortcut, often at high speeds. This poses a serious danger to everyone who lives on or uses the street, especially our most vulnerable users, the many toddlers and young children who live here. I'm particularly concerned about the safety of these children. We have the Sligo Mill Overlook Playground right here on Orchard. Also, we have school bus stops serving the surrounding blocks, meaning children congregate on the street every school day. And while the Sligo Mill Overlook Playground at Orchard and Fifth is a great resource for young families, that corner has also been a site of drug dealing and other criminal activity, at times resulting in high-speed car chases during the very hours that kids are getting off the school bus. Beyond the issues of cut-through traffic and speeding, we also have the VFW post on this block, and it's a valued institution. So the fact that it serves alcohol draws patrons who almost exclusively drive to and from the venue adds to the traffic concerns, particularly in the evenings. I urge the city to approve the request for Orchard as well as the adjacent request for Orchard and Fifth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Oh, another comment.
Yes, Roger Schlegel, former commoner of Pinecrest. I will just add all those context elements. Just to add one more is that we have the grandfathered light industrial commercial area that empties onto Orchard, including Maggio Roofing, and so we have commercial vehicles and employees also using that street in proximity to the garden and the playground.
While we transition to the next one, I did want to just raise a sort of a point, which is that stop signs are actually not traffic calming measures. They're traffic control measures, so they're really seen in a very different light. That said, in residential neighborhoods, people often think that a stop sign is traffic calming, but it's not. There's criteria that need to be used when stop signs are installed. We can certainly go through the process of evaluating it. There is, state has standards that identify the conditions that need to be in place for a stop sign. But it is a little cross-thinking. Stop signs aren't considered traffic calming. We don't consider them traffic calming. They're installed for a separate reason. So as we go through this, we may make a recommendation for a stop sign, but it will not be for traffic calming per se. It will be because it met the criteria of a stop sign on intersecting roads.
Question about Daryl's remarks. So Daryl, are there separate funding streams for control versus calming?
Stop signs themselves are not a very expensive installation, so it would get funded through any number of sources of operating funds.
Just point of clarification. The January 29th email had a a lot of other requests for Ward 1. I know on this paper there's only 2. Specifically for Ray Drive between Margaret and Piney Branch, which is it's on the border of Tacoma and Silver Spring.
Yeah.
I might have missed the agenda.
No. This list is all of the proposals that were within city limits. So unfortunately, if a proposal was outside of the city limits, for example, Ray Drive, we did not include them in it because the city doesn't control those right-of-ways.
I guess, what is the remedy then for residents of Tacoma Park to work through our city council to make sure the county is engaged in that? Because that is a major thoroughway. It's gotten worse now that there's a stop sign on Ritchie. So I'm sorry, I might have missed the beginning agenda items, but I mean, there's a number of Tacoma Park residents that are affected by the speeding down Ray because of the backup on Ritchie.
Yeah, Montgomery County Department of Transportation is the authority that would address or evaluate traffic calming requests for county roads. So you would need to make the request directly to Montgomery County DOT.
Okay, so could I work with the city on getting a letter of support to on behalf of its residents for our council, our county council person? Because there are a number of, I'm sorry, I just didn't, I missed the beginning, so I know you guys just considered 2 for Ward 1, so I was a bit caught off guard.
Yeah, we probably want to talk afterwards. It can be problematic to provide government-to-government recommendations when we each have our own process, but it may be something that we can talk about outside this meeting and figure out what's the best avenue.
Okay.
Are we able to? We're bouncing back really quickly to Lincoln Avenue. We have a Zoom comment.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name's Evan Light. I've been living on Lincoln for 10 years now. Lincoln is essentially a one-lane road. There are cars parked on either side of Lincoln throughout the day. So we essentially already have the traffic calming, if you will, of the devices that are built into the sides of the road to slow traffic. However, we get cut-through traffic that's bleed over from the ill-designed Tacoma Junction, which we have no control over, as I understand it, because that's the junction of several different state roads. That most of this traffic seems to go down Lincoln and not Boyd. We get it from New Hampshire, typically comes from New Hampshire to Carroll in the evening and the other way around in the morning. The speed bumps we have seem to be largely ineffectual. There have been cars sideswiped. There are several cones that people deploy around their cars to try to prevent them being sideswiped. We've got a sidewalk, at least that helps pedestrians. If you don't live on the sidewalk side of the street, it seems rather dangerous to cross because if the car's parked there, there tends to be poor visibility for drivers and for the pedestrians to see what's coming down the road. Plus, there are also steep hills on Lincoln, especially going up or down from Carroll to Jackson. What I'd really like to see is something much like what already exists at Carroll and Jackson, where there is a sign restricting turns on the Jackson during specific hours of the day. It would be really lovely to have that if we can't do it at Carroll and Elm, because that requires in Philadelphia and Elm, Ethan Allen and Elm, in Carroll and Jackson, because of the state road that we'd have to negotiate with MDOT. We at least could do it on Elm and Larch, Elm and Lincoln, and then with Jackson and Lincoln and Jackson and Boyd, because we can't really do much about the state road. That we're getting an overflow from the junction doesn't seem right. It's only been getting worse for years. There have been, I've seen, because I would sit on the front step in the afternoon sometimes, I would see near accidents occurring on Lincoln because of people coming from both directions at the same time. If we can't go to no through traffic or 15 miles an hour, as I think it might have been the chief suggested, can we at least have time restrictions?
Thank you very much. I think we have another Zoom comment for Lincoln. Anna or no?
While we get Anna, there was a comment from Barb. Let me just read that. Lincoln Avenue. We are receiving much speed-in, cut-through traffic from Ethan Allen to Carroll. Most cars on our block have lost mirrors and fenders or worse. Our cars have been hit twice. My neighbor has been hit 4 times. Another neighbor at least twice. There have also been several near road rage incidents. Large trucks cause a line of cars to have to back up some distance to let them through.
Thank you very much. Are we able to get Anna?
Anna, if you could type your message, please. It doesn't seem as if we can unmute you.
All right.
Hi, I think you're on mute now.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, we have been also living in Tacoma for over 15 years, 17 years now. And this was a very calm street. Now it's really impossible. We are one of those who live on the side that does not have the sidewalk. So coming in and out of our house and crossing the street to go to the sidewalk is really dangerous. Anything that will just have one-way traffic will be ideal to stop the through traffic, because it's not only is dangerous for the same reasons that our other people have been talking about, but also the road rage. There has been very, very close incidents of people screaming at each other, getting out of their cars, because there's no way that 2 cars can go through Lincoln Avenue in both directions at the same time. So any control of traffic, one-way street coming from Ethan Allen to Elm, anything that can stop that will be highly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Is that all with the Zoom? Okay. So we're going to move back, and we're moving on to Lincoln, between Lincoln and Carroll. And the request is for no through traffic signs. Any comments on this proposal? All right. Oh,
Between Lincoln and Carroll or at Lincoln and Carroll?
at Lincoln and Carroll.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies. Oh,
And just to point out that this is the next block after the folks you just heard talking about Lincoln, the couple of blocks that they were talking about. It's the same stretch.
Yeah, and just for a general overview, no through traffic signs or local traffic only signs are not enforceable. So they don't tend to have a significant impact on changing driver behavior, unfortunately.
all right. We'll move on to Hancock. Along Hancock Avenue between Sherman and Lee, there's a request for a sidewalk. Are there any comments on this request? All right. Moving on to Ward 5. We have one request for Ward 5. Yeah.
Before we go on, there is a comment about Lincoln to Carroll, time restriction, not no through traffic. And time restricted turns, and a question, how is Jackson and Ethan Allen enforced?
Yeah, for a turn restriction, that can be enforced because it sets a certain time that you're not allowed to turn. So if a police officer is there, they can stop and ticket anyone who makes that turn. So it's enforced by the presence of the police.
All right. I'm going to keep us moving along to Ward 5 at Sligo Creek. At the intersection of Sligo Creek Parkway and the walking path that extends from Wabash into Sligo Creek, there's a request for pavement markings. Any
And I just want to
comments?
say Sligo Creek Parkway is not a city street, so we don't have the ability to do pavement markings. We probably should have flagged this one as not one that we have authority over.
Parks has that
Right.
in their
Correct.
project. There is a larger problem between Domer and Wabash, though.
Yep.
All right. Moving on. Ward 6. So we have, starting with Glenside Drive and Jackson Avenue, there's a request for a speed bump, lighted stop sign, or flashing stop signs. So are there any comments on this request?
Yes, I try to object.
All right. Moving along to Wildwood Drive, there's a number of different requests with this. One includes a sidewalk at Wildwood Drive and Glenside, pavement markings at the 7300 block of Wildwood between Glenside and Merwood, a sidewalk at the 7400 block between Lancaster and Merwood. At the intersection with Lancaster, a speed bump, raised walkway, or a three-way stop sign. A speed bump at the 7400 block. A speed bump at the block of Holton. And then a speed bump camera at a stop sign, or a local traffic only sidewalk signage at the intersection of Merwood and Wildwood. So are there any comments on any of these proposals?
Hi, my name is Ish Patel. I live on the 7400 block of Wildwood with my wife, and we have a 1-month-old newborn daughter. So the reason behind, I don't know which one of these I specifically submitted, but I worked with my neighbors to submit many to highlight the major issue that we have on our block of the cut-through traffic that is avoiding the intersection of probably New Hampshire and University. And they use Wildwood as the main route to avoid it and get onto westbound University. Luckily, over the past month, we've had a nice reprieve with Carroll being closed, so the traffic is slightly reduced, but not fully, obviously. And I understand that we live on a public street and you can't stop all the cars. So my request is simple traffic calming measures on our block that could help avoid me, my wife, my daughter. When we're crossing the street, we don't want to get hit. Cars they don't care about the people who live here. We live here, and we just want to be safe when we're going across to walk our dog, just go for a nice walk. Later on, our daughter will be going to school. There's a school bus stop right at Merwood and Wildwood. I see a ton of kids there. They have to get there somehow. So it's just really a big issue. I'm sure you guys have heard about this, but I wanted to just add a personal note to it so it gets taken under consideration.
Thanks. Any other comments on this proposal?
I would just like to concur that it is a problem. I've been out there for the last 2 days, and I saw all the violations. Appreciate the comment.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, we are moving along to New Hampshire Avenue and Merwood. A request for a red light camera. Any comments?
There are red light cameras along New Hampshire Avenue. I don't think Merwood is one of the locations. I don't think so. But that was an analysis done by the...
The question was for red light
red light camera at Merwood and New Hampshire.
Glenside in New
Yeah.
Hampshire, yes.
Yeah, so there is red light cameras at other locations. Is Holton Lane gonna have a?
Holton Lane as well, yes.
Yeah, Holton Lane and Glenside, but not at Merwood.
And most likely more coming in the future.
And then at Hammond, there's a request for sidewalk, speed bumps, or a one-way. Are there any comments? Oh, right there.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kelly. I live on Hammond Avenue between Lockney and Ann Street. I have 2 young kids that are 6 and 3. I saw that there was, I specifically put in the request about Hammond being one way. We typically see cars going up towards Lockney that then I guess get on either Carroll or University, and they're going 40, 50 miles an hour, just speeding ridiculously up the street. And it's always in that direction. It's not going down towards Ann. I see that probably my other neighbors may have requested speed bumps and sidewalk, and I would definitely agree with that. I walk my son to the bus stop every morning, and we have to walk in the street. And yeah, I think anything to slow the traffic down, make it more difficult for people to use our neighborhood to cut through would be really appreciated.
And so just to clarify the request, the request is for a one-way, but it would be going down towards Ann Street?
Correct. One way, and then also speed bumps on Hammond Avenue.
Okay. Thanks.
Roger Slagle, Ward 3. I just wanted to add about that, the Hammond Avenue. I believe what's happening is that when traffic is queuing on Carroll Avenue from University Boulevard on down towards Ann Street, people begin to peel off and cut through to try to get as close as they can on Merrimack by the 7-Eleven. And so that's pushing them on to Hammond or Lockney or some of those other streets. They're just trying to bypass the backup on Carroll. So the one-way would certainly address that, at least on that block, yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments? All right, and then I believe our next is 13th Avenue. And it says halfway down the block there's a request for a speed bump.
Hi, I'm Amy Westlick. I'm the Ward 6 council member, and I also live very close to this intersection, so I want to speak up if no one else would. That road, there's very low visibility because it twists. There's a lot of trees, which is wonderful, but cars really do speed down that, so I think a speed bump there would be really beneficial.
Thanks. Oh,
And that's from Erskine to Elson? Yeah, between Erskine and Elson? Yeah.
Not between.
Yeah.
If you could look at the slide, the green box at the lower right, just right there, that would be good. Okay.
I just had a sort of follow-up question about crosswalks in Ward 6. It seems like we don't have any. Especially there's a 3-way stop sign at Ann and Hammond. People always go right through that stop sign, but maybe if there was a crosswalk there, that would help. I'm not sure. But throughout Ward 6, I don't really see too many crosswalks.
Yeah, one of the requirements is for a crosswalk, you have to have curb ramps and sidewalks. So we can only put crosswalks where a sidewalk exists. You can't put a crosswalk you can't put a crosswalk across the street when there is no accepting curb ramp or sidewalk. So that you will only see crosswalks in areas where there are sidewalks and curb ramps. And when the sidewalks were put in Ward 6, numerous crosswalks were installed as part of that project, but they're only in those locations where the sidewalks are.
All right. Any other?
It's Amy Westlick again. I just really want to speak again because, when you look at the list, you can see how many requests there are for the New Hampshire Gardens area. So I just want to speak to represent that was a big effort. A lot of neighbors wanted to participate. I've walked those roads. It is a huge concern, and things, as much as we could address as soon as possible, is really, really needed. Every person I spoke to in that neighborhood, the first and usually only thing they told me was about how fast cars are going down these roads, and it's not safe. It's not safe for them, their kids, their pets, school bus stops. It's just really, really bad, and we need some things are in the works to try to slow it down in any way we can.
Yeah, I want to speak to that just briefly. There are some previously approved projects in Ward 6, so that I just want to make sure people know those are ongoing. One is a sidewalk on 13th Avenue between Elson Place and Elson Street, so that's currently in design. We also have an approved intersection control at 3 intersections, 13th and Elson, 14th and Elson, and 14th and Elson Street. So those will be doing significant reductions of the radius of the turns to try to tighten them up. So those projects are already underway and have been funded and are moving forward. We also, as someone mentioned earlier, have sidewalks in design on Darwin Avenue, Hodges Lane, and Chestnut Avenue. So those sidewalks are currently in process, and they'll be funded to complete through the normal process. So these are in addition to any of those. Casey, did you want to speak to the traffic engineering study that?
So that's where we are going next, which is we recognize that there is a concern in Ward 6 specifically about some of these traffic issues, and so we are in the process of completing a request for proposals for firms to come in and do a traffic study specifically for Ward 6.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up again about the one-way request, that in addition to the cars that are going really fast, there's like a mini circle there at Lockney. And so when you are coming around trying to make a right onto Hammond, you're going against traffic that's coming up Hammond, and it's really dangerous and it's hard to see. And I've almost had several accidents at that intersection.
Hi, I'm Jessica Landman from Ward 1. Earlier, there was legislation that was mentioned about speed limits on city roads that is making its way through the state legislature. I just wanted to flag another piece of legislation we're hoping to see move, which is one that would allow the equivalent of a red light camera on stop signs, especially stop signs in school zones. And listening to the discussion this evening, how many people mentioned bus stops for schools, it occurs to me that we should maybe try to include stop signs adjacent to school bus stops and not just in school zones. But that's something that if we get permission to do it, it would enable us to turn those stop signs, which are supposed to be traffic control only, into something that would actually be really helpful for traffic calming as well. So that's still to be determined if we succeed, but it's on the agenda for the City Council to work with our delegation.
Thanks. Any other comments on this?
Just a general comment. The stop signs that are coming out on the school buses are just as enforceable as any other stop sign. And in fact, they have higher penalties. And all of the school buses are equipped with flash cameras to capture the offender. Thank you for that comment.
I'm happy to hear that, knowing that this, and specifically the New Hampshire Gardens neighborhood, and I'm very happy about what's going to be happening in Hillwood Manor. But I'm focused right now on New Hampshire Gardens. I'm happy to hear there will be a traffic study. What would be a rough timeline between today and trying to get someone for that and actually seeing anything happen on these roads?
Yeah, so I'll start with the traffic study. That will take, several months and probably not be completed. Certainly not this fiscal year, probably well into next fiscal year before we are able to engage a firm, hire them. That goes through a standard contracting process that will likely have to be, the firms will be reviewed. Staff will make a recommendation for selection. And from there, that would provide potential projects, which then would be implemented through the CIP, which would go through kind of a similar process to this. So it could be several years before some of those potential projects get implemented.
I'm just concerned that that waiting for that process, I want the job to be done well and done right, but especially given so much of it is related to the Purple Line, and that is the biggest issue for the next 2 to 3 years. I'm concerned if we might not actually see something on the roads until, say, 1 or 2 or 3 years from now, especially if the other, intersections that we've talked about tonight, if we're, as a city, moving forward and able to do some of those in the next year, but this area, which is the hardest, is taking a lot longer because we're trying to do this more thorough process. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, how can we get something now and not waiting so long?
Absolutely. So the way I would look at this is let's call it the traffic study does not replace any recommendations from kind of the resident kind of input. So think of it as bolstering it. And that those projects, it takes a little bit longer because there is a little bit more systemic, and that's why one of the reasons why this resident-led process was kind of implemented, with the idea that residents spend more time in the neighborhood, they have lived experiences there, and they are able to identify problem spots, and we wanted to include that. So what I would say is, this process, this is the first year of this process, it will happen again next year. And so we would encourage, if you have spots that aren't working, that need addressing, please continue to submit when we open it back up in July for the next round in fiscal year 27. So this is, we're always want to hear feedback. Sometimes certain things don't move as quickly as we would like, and that's why we're trying to complement processes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just want to add that from the traffic study, we're asking for things that can be implemented without an infrastructure change. So we'll be looking at things that can be implemented quickly without much of a budget spend as well. So there may be things that are in the short term and then some that are in the longer term.
And I was just going to say, we'll still evaluate the requests that we've received. Like the issue for the 7400 block of Wildwood has been ongoing for a while, and it just, when we had the old process, we never had the petition. Petition was required, and the city never received one that matched the criteria. So now that that petition process is no longer in place, we can evaluate that. So I think there'll be some measures like the speed hump in the 7400 block that we can plan to do as a very simple measure, separate from the traffic. I see this sort of fuller traffic evaluation as trying to look holistically. We had one several years ago, and many traffic calming measures were installed in the New Hampshire Garden neighborhoods as a result of that engineering analysis. So we have gone through these processes before, and they do take a long time. I just wanted to say in the interim, certainly that issue of the speed humps in the 7400 block will get evaluated, and because they are fairly simple to do, could likely be included. Another thing that we're looking at on a staff level is we have an issue with our traffic circles there, where there's crosswalks that are not compliant. And so that's a serious issue that we need to get resolved. So we're going to do that outside of the traffic engineering analysis, just because there's a need. So those will be included. So you will see some things recommended for the budget. Council will see the list and will ultimately decide what to fund. But it'll be our intention to, move as many of these projects along as we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other final comments?
If we want to submit additional information for any of the existing requests, who do we direct that to?
All right. Getting. So you read my mind. So yes, we will still be accepting comments. We know that this is one step in getting resident feedback, but we encourage you. Let's say you have a late night brainwave, early morning brainwave, shower thought. Please send additional comments to planning@tacomaparkmd.gov. We will be accepting them. Roz, do you have an end date for when we're going to be accepting?
Our end date is when this goes before council as part of the capital improvements project's budget. I expect that to be in March.
Yeah.
So, in the next 2 weeks, if you can.
All right. So I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight or joining us via Zoom. We really appreciate all of your feedback, and what we will be doing is taking all these great comments, bringing them together, synthesizing them, and then also including it as part of with the technical analysis that staff will be performing as part of kind of pulling this forward during our budget process. So thank you all very, very much, and we hope you have a wonderful night.